News Radio 840 WHAS. Good Sunday morning. Bob Sokoler, the Louisville Real Estate Show, here with you until the top of the hour. Thank you for joining us with a lot of your questions ready to be answered. We've got Chuck Crosby. He is the owner of the Crosby Law Offices and has a great group over there. Not only does Chuck do closings, in other words, gets your loan closed, but he also does a variety of other things, including wills, powers of attorney, foreclosure defense, commissioner sale help. So he's really a jack of, well, he's a Chuck of all trades.
There you go.
He's a Chuck. Sometimes I crack me up.
Yeah.
Chuck of all trades. You can reach Chuck over at his office at 499-6360. Also here, Brad Lawler. He's the owner of Home Team Inspection Service. They come in as a team as opposed to an individual, and then they go to town and they check your home from top to bottom, inside and out. And you can reach Brad and his group, Home Team Inspection Service. By the way, should I tell you, they're also the #1 Home Team Inspection Service. 8 years in a row. We're looking for 9.
And 5 months.
And 5 months. 8 years, 5 months.
5 months up, right?
#1. Yeah. Then so that's a big deal. Let me tell you, in the home inspection world, that's a big deal. You can reach Brad at the 844-411-TEAM, and now they also have Team Bug Out, who I switched over to this past week, and I'm thrilled I did. Just so you know.
Well, thank you. We don't want to let things bug you, Bob. So
nothing
we can do. Sorry, Chuck.
Chuck. Chuck of all trades was bad. So okay. And I think my son Greg may be trying to jump on. He's busy already this morning. So we've got a lot of stuff going on. You know, if you're a regular listener of the show, you will know that we do not fear to take on controversial subjects. And we are going to take on a really controversial right off the top. You know, and you may have heard about us talking, and nationally it's being talked about as well, buyer love letters. Chuck, explain, if you would, sir, as the attorney, what a buyer love letter is.
It's a real estate love letter. It's a buyer writing out paragraphs, sometimes longer, missive as to why they ought to be picked to purchase this house. Oh, I can see my children coming down those stairs on Christmas morning. So that's what it is. It's a, hey, please pick me.
Yep. Now, realtors across the country have mixed feelings about love letters because there's a belief that writing a letter to the seller from the buyer gives the buyer an unfair advantage, especially if that letter contains, well, fair housing violations, using terms that should not be in the letter. So some realtors, both locally and nationally, refused and have been refusing to forward a buyer love letter to the seller. The National Association of Realtors' advice for real estate professionals is to advise clients about the potential risks posed by a buyer love letter. The key problem is that there's a concern that the buyer would feel discriminated against if they lost to another buyer and could sue the interested parties over those fair housing regulations. Is that summing it up, Chuck?
Yeah, pretty much. It goes a little bit further. Most of the people that are, because it's not just realtors involved in this fight. There's a lot of fair housing outfits saying that there ought to be laws against doing this, because in the example I gave, if I send a letter saying, hey, I love this house so much, I can just see my kids running down the stairs on Christmas morning, I've let you know that I have children, my familial status, which is something protected, and I've also let you know my religion.
Yep.
So if I send you a letter and put something like that, these fair housing groups are saying that gives the seller a greater opportunity to discriminate. You know, I don't think anybody's ever going to confuse me with someone who is in favor of discrimination.
Yeah.
I'm really down on that sort of thing. Anyhow, the point being, I don't know that I agree with these groups. Bob, I've seen you get angry before over reasonable things. Should I handcuff you right now to prevent you from doing something illegal in the future?
Mm-hmm.
I just don't think that's fair. And to create a statute like Oregon did back in, what was it, 2020, 2019, something like that. Mm-hmm. When Oregon created a statute outlawing these things, the federal courts kicked it down pretty heavily, saying that's a violation of the First Amendment. Uh-huh. So, you know, I really, we're professionals, right?
Right.
I'm going to go as an attorney. The first time you file your first lawsuit, you're freaking out. I've made a mistake. I've done something that's going to get me sued. But we're professionals. You get over that. We take the risk. We get paid for it. We get educated to try and avoid those risks. You know, I wonder at what point the NAR's stance is actually just, hey, we don't want our people to get sued because somebody might take something and do something illegal on their own.
Right. Well, let me point out the reason this
Yeah.
has come to a head this week is because this past week, Daryl Davis wrote an opinion piece. He's a real estate professional on a national website, and he's urging realtors to revisit buyer love letters and not promote misinformation, which is what's been going out there. And by that he means, he says, there have been no lawsuits, despite some realtors saying there have been lawsuits. There have been no lawsuits against a realtor for forwarding a buyer love letter. So, folks, here's why it's important for all of you who are listening to the show to understand this concept and why I'm bringing it up. Because if you're buying a home, or your kids or your family or your friends or your relatives are buying a home, it's very competitive out there. There are fewer homes out there, so anyone that's on the market is going to be prime real estate, literally and figuratively. So using a buyer love letter to try to sway the seller towards you becomes oh so important. And if there are people who are saying don't do it, you're being told information that is an unfair advantage to the people who would write the buyer love letter. So my point is, I understand that many of my colleagues here locally and around the country may disagree with my opinion and Chuck's opinion, but I suggest those of you who disagree in the real estate world, read the opinion piece by Daryl Davis on Inman, and then form your own opinions based on fact as opposed to misinformation. And there's been a lot of discussion around the country, people on all sides of this thing. But you can take this, as Chuck points it out here, that you can take this much further, which would be detrimental to, because then do you remove the name of the person signing?
That's what I was going to get at.
Yes,
many
right.
names will give a national origin.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And was there not a time when you actually had buyers and sellers meet?
Yes.
Are we going to ban, bumping into each other at Whole Foods?
Well, one thing that happened, GLAR had a fair housing summit last week, and this topic was raised during the fair housing summit. And one of the things that they had talked about were these blind contracts, using a third party to actually scrub the names, because certainly names, do at least lean towards some sort of identification, but it is, they were discussing it at the Fair Housing Summit, and looking like 2024 is going to be a year that more and more information is going to come. No facts, no details were given, but it's certainly a topic that they continue to look into to try to make more fair purchasing decisions out there.
That's just what we need, is a third party now getting in the middle of everything else that becomes complicated.
But look at how you said that, though, Brad. You're basically saying that the sellers are going to be unfair, and we need to prevent them from doing that. I can't see a legal basis to immediately assume somebody is going to do a bad thing.
Right. No, I understand your point there, and I'm simply passing on the information.
I understand.
Systems that are in place and being reviewed to just essentially level the playing field.
Let me bring in son Greg just joined us from the car, and I know he's coming in late on this. We're talking about buyer love letters. Greg, you have you have opinion on this one way or another?
We just won a contract with one 2 days ago.
There you go.
So, my opinion.
Yeah. So
coming in hard, fast, and strong.
And I see that all the time. I amplify what Greg just said. So listen, first of all, for listeners, if your agent doesn't want to use one, talk to them about it. Have them call me, and I'll point them in the direction of what is out there. Or again, if you want, just give me a call at any time, and we'll talk about what needs to be done.
The thing is, and not to come in too late on it, the thing is, there's no gray area here. We're not operating in the gray yet. This is a tool that you should be using to win homes. There is no legal reference or precedent, if I'm saying that correctly, Chuck, that would tell us, don't do your best to win your client a home, and or just because people don't like them, just know your audience and ask the listing agent first and foremost, hey, will you guys accept a love letter? Are you okay with that? And that's the best thing you can really do.
All right, let's move forward, because we've already spent much of the show on this. By the way, I should have said at the beginning of the show that if you're thinking about selling and you haven't picked a realtor yet, I would love to apply for the job, and we'd love to help you. You can call me at 376-5483 or go to bobsellslouisville.com and then just start filling out the information. That will get right to me. Okay, we move forward. Brad, over to you. Ronald and by the way, coming up a little later on after the break, 11 ticking time bombs in your house and how to deal with them. Ronald is planning a family picnic in his backyard this month, and this is important for Brad because of his new company, Team Bug Out. And he sent us this. He says he's seen a couple of wasps hanging around the house. In his email, he's asking, how does he prevent wasps and mosquitoes from being backyard guests at his family picnic?
You've got two completely different treatment programs there. Mosquitoes can be treated preventatively using, fogging about every 21 days over the course of the breeding months. So you're really looking at, we started with insect growth regulators back in April, doing a couple treatments there, and then starting in June, you just go to kind of preventive treatments. But as far as wasps go, wasps are really treated as they appear. So, for just the do-it-yourself home owners, a can of wasp spray, that'll shoot 20, 25 feet is fine. Now, if you have more, we were in a commercial building that had an outbuilding in it here a couple weeks ago, and there were about 40 or 50 wasp nests inside of that shed. That's a different thing. You don't want to go in and start just shooting out of a can. I mean, that's more of a professional treatment there for the wasp. But if it's just one small wasp nest, the trick is just knock it down. I would suggest if it's before they get too big, you knock it down, sometime around sunset, before things, while things kind of die down and the wasps settle down. Don't try to do it in the middle of the day.
Yeah, and that can stuff is super messy. If you ever used it before and you're trying to hit a flying wasp. In the house, I remember,
and don't use it inside because there's a lot of oils in it, and it will stain paint. Yeah, it does stain. It makes a mess. And you're trying to hit them out of the air, Greg? Well, just talking about spraying a nest. But
there's one other option. There is one other option. I will load kosher salt into my bug assault rifle.
Yes,
I will take the wasps out of air.
I think we all have bug assault rifles here.
We do.
Individuals, that's right.
We should have a team, a bug assault team. That would be, and that could be sponsored by Team Bug Out, right? Exactly.
I can picture the shirts right now.
I can see that now.
I keep mine right by the door.
Yes, Brad, when you have a wife who is petrified of wasps, I remember my very first house, there was them. I was literally trying to spray it out of the air, and I got it but it was a mess. It was more of a mess to clean it up than just to let it probably die inside anyway.
And the reason that I know that stuff stains is because it's happened all over my house with my wife and daughter. We were the exact same way, Greg.
And finally, on this point with the wasps and mosquitoes, Chuck, as the attorney for this group, do we need a concealed carry permit for the bug assault
rifles? Well, no, in fact, you don't.
Okay. All right. On that note, we're going to take a break.
Trying to salt my food.
We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll talk about the 11 ticking time bombs in your house and how to deal with them. Again, staying with us, Chuck Crosby, the owner of the Crosby Law Offices. You can reach Chuck at 499-6360. Also, Brett Lawler, owner of Home Team Inspection Service, 844-411-TEAM. My son, Greg, who does our marketing and photography, has joined us from the car. And you can reach me anytime if you're thinking about selling or buying. We can help you. You can reach me on my cell phone, even after the show. I answer on the weekends and at night. 502-376-5483, or go to bobsellslouisville.com or WeSellLouisville.com. We're back in a moment on News Radio 840 WHAS. News Radio 840 WHAS, Bob Sokoler, the Louisville Real Estate Show, here with you till the top of the hour, and joining us again, Chuck Crosby, Crosby Law Offices, 499-6360. You can pick the closing attorney that you want, and Chuck is one of the top guys in this area. You really deserve the best, and Chuck Crosby answers that call. Also, another thing you deserve is the best home inspection team, and that's Brad Lawler and Home Team Inspection Service. You can reach Brad and his group at 844-411-TEAM. You can also reach him for his new Team Bug Out, which is a pest elimination company. My son Greg, who does our marketing, photography, and so much more, is continuing with us. And you can reach me, Bob Sokoler, anytime. If you're thinking about selling now or in the future years, you can just call me. I'll come out. It's free, no obligation to meet, to discuss, come up with a plan, pick my brain. I'm there for you. You can reach me at 376-5483 or go to bobsellslouisville.com or WeSellLouisville.com. Okay. There are time bombs ticking in everybody's home, and what I'm going to do is bring up the subject. Brad's going to give us one line about the things, what to do, how to prevent it. Here we go. Before it's too late, fix these things, folks, or get on them. Foundation, Brad.
Yeah. So you're looking here. If you see any small cracks, particularly in the brick veneer, anything, particularly crack through a brick, stair step in the mortar, have it looked at right away, because that's giving some indication that you got movement in your foundation.
Okay. The roof.
I think the biggest thing with the roof, I would tell you, look at the bottom of your downspout, see whether or not you've got a lot of little granules. If you've got a lot of granules that are down there, you've got, your roof is getting to the end of its life. You want to take a look at your roof too, make sure that you don't have any damaged shingles or missing shingles, particularly with the windstorms that we've had recently. People aren't paying attention to the fact that the roofs are damaged, but you got to take care of that now.
Septic system.
Septic systems, I think that's just a maintenance item for those people who are on septic. Depending on the size of the house and the number of people in the house, you'll have to maintain that or have that system pumped every 3 years or so. But also you want to make sure that you're not putting foodstuffs and other things down into the septic system. Keep it to the ones and twos out there. Sorry.
Okay, got it. Yeah, referencing that. Electrical wiring.
I think this article is referencing the older homes, those that have single strand aluminum wiring, those with Federal Pacific panels, Zinsco panels. You just want to make sure that you don't see any evidence of overheating. Make sure you have an electrician that you know and trust, and have them come in periodically and do the inspection on the system. Make sure it's still functioning correctly.
Crawl spaces.
Open it up, take a look at it. Please, you can't imagine how many homes we inspect that people don't know they have raw sewage in their crawl spaces because they've had pipes leaking and they didn't know it. So check that periodically just to make sure you don't have water building up under there.
Furnaces.
Furnace and HVAC, generally, you're just looking to make sure that you've got some sort of a service contract. It's a whole lot cheaper to maintain the system than it is to replace the system. Have it inspected by a competent tech twice a year.
Your deck out back.
Yeah, decks can be scary. You need to make sure they're maintained. Any damaged wood is taken care of. Reseal it. Also, make sure that you look underneath if you can. Make sure it's not pulling away from the house. We see that a lot, particularly those that are nailed on rather than like bolted in.
Heating oil tanks, if you've got one.
Heating oil tank. This is something that has come up. Actually, just recently, we had an environmental engineer who had to work with one of our clients with a tank that was left in the yard. People weren't aware of it. They knew there was a vent there. Problem was oil had been left in the tank rotted out, it leaked, leached into the ground, and it was a big expensive remediation job to clean out, and the homeowners that lived there for a lot of years and didn't even realize there was a tank in the yard.
Dryer vents.
Yeah, dryer vents. This is something you want to keep them cleaned out. Make sure they're not kinked. I know, Bob, we looked at that one picture of that, the flexible pipe, flexible hose back behind the dryer. That should be a straight run. It should not be any bends immediately coming out of that dryer. You got to make sure that the air flows and the lint doesn't build up.
Yeah, that was Jen's house, and
that's right.
Work on that. Yeah.
It's funny you say that. My cousin was doing repair on his dryer vent, and he sends me a picture of a 90-degree, like 4-inch ejector, but it was at a 90-degree and elbow. And I said, no, you got to run it straight. I was like, if you have an elbow, that's a place for lint to pick up. He goes, well, tell that to everyone else in my apartment building. I was like, well, then you may have a fire issue in your apartment building.
Yeah, get out. Yeah. Old plumbing.
Yeah, old plumbing. If you have a house that has galvanized pipe, or even if you've got lead pipe in your house, you want to watch for that. A lot of copper in the city gets pinhole leaks. Does a lot of water damage. This is just something, particularly if you've got a basement that's unfinished and you can see the pipes, but keep an eye on it, because as soon as you find a water spot, you want to get your plumber out there to take a look, because it may require an upgrade to the
finally water heater.
Yeah, water heaters, just, this is something that either for most of us, it's just they work or they don't work. This is just, if you're in the habit of draining them periodically, great, keep doing that. If you're not in the habit of draining it, as soon as you open that valve, no, it's probably not going to close again.
Got it.
And don't block the area under the discharge for the pressure relief valve. Make sure
if it blows, right? If it blows, you don't want to be there. All right, we move over to Chuck. Chuck, this is one of the pet peeves I think you and I both have here. Let's get into this. Rebecca sends us an email. She is selling her home, and her agent tells her she needs to buy and she lives in Louisville, by the way, Jefferson County, a new 10-year lithium non-removable battery smoke detector after she gets a contract, but before she closes on her home. So far she's right about that, right?
Yeah, it's
we
got to
both
be
agree.
a 10-year non-removable lithium battery or hardwired in the hallway of any hallway that's adjacent to a bedroom.
Rebecca says she is annoyed, though. She just bought several 10-year lithium non-removable battery smoke detectors 3 months ago. Her agent says that's great, but they need to be new. And she is saying
she's correct.
They have
here's
to.
The thing.
The
Here's
agent's
the thing.
correct.
I think a lot of people get confused because they don't realize that if they are hard, do they? Now, there's a question, and I believe I know the answer, but if they're hardwired, they do not have to be new, or they do have to be new.
I don't believe hardwired.
No, they don't have to be new. No, they don't.
Yeah,
correct.
But
it's all about the battery, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So my point being is, I think a lot of they get confused, and they don't even know half the time if they're hardwired, because the homeowner will say, "I don't know," and they say, "Well, go ahead and just replace them." And then you say, well, "Listen, just go get a screwdriver or get you an electrician out there and just have them pull one and see that most homes are hardwired."
Okay.
Yeah.
So
because this particular ordinance is minuscule compared to the requirements for builders to keep to the building code. You've got to have a gazillion of these things.
Yeah.
This one particular ordinance just talks about one hallway.
Well, but
if you've got batteries, then get new ones. If you don't know, go find out.
You can't put
new ones.
You can't put new battery. You have to buy a new smoke.
I mean new. Sorry, yes, new smoke detector.
Yeah. So what Rebecca's point here is that she's angry because apparently the people who wrote the smoke detector ordinance for Jefferson County was a smoke detector company.
Well, there you go.
Brad, am I right about that?
I don't know if that's true or not, but I've heard the same thing, Bob.
Yeah.
It sounds to me like an urban myth.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know it was the fire marshal that promulgated it. And so, does he own a company? I don't know. I see a lot of fire guys come through inspecting the buildings and selling fire extinguishers. But,
Well, okay. So listen, if anybody knows about the actual genesis of this, let us know. So,
well, it was 1999 when it came out the first time. So anybody that was in,
yeah, we'll try to track that down. Back over to Brad. Ann has a problem with her next door neighbor. She writes he smokes constantly and has some smoke that gets into her condo. Apparently, this is happening a lot when the windows are open. So the smoke is wafting over to hers. And now she's worried that the smells of smoke every time she walks into her condo, she smells it. And she wants to get rid of that smoke smell. And of course, she wants to keep her windows open and not have to close them. And she's wondering what way is there to get rid of smoke smell inside her condo. And I think this is really a good point for anybody who has had a smoker living in the house and has that smoky smell. What would you suggest at this point?
Well, I know a lot of folks just will run down to the hardware store, the auto parts store, and pick up a can of Ozium, which I know is effective. But as far as once it gets into fabrics and soft materials like carpets and any upholstery, that is a different type of cleaning, and you're not going to cover it up with a Febreze. At that point, I think you're looking at professional cleaning. As far as how to keep it out, I mean, the problem there is you got to have a higher pressure inside the apartment or the condo pushing out. So, if you want to keep your windows open, really, it sounds silly, but you almost have to have a fan running on the inside, pushing out, or having the HVAC fan set on to give a little, positive pressure to keep the smoke out. But that's a tough one.
Yeah. Okay. All right. If we get any more on that, we'll pass that on. All right, Chuck, final question for you. James writing in that he's lived in his apartment here in Louisville 7 years now. And the person who moved in below him 4 years ago constantly complaining to him about noise issues coming from James's apartment. So far we have that problem. He says in this email that the neighbor below is harassing him, banging on his door, yelling at him. James says he's a senior citizen that lives alone, doesn't have any friends over or play music. So what are his options in handling this downstairs neighbor? What would you suggest at this point?
So this is an apartment. It's not a condo.
It is an apartment.
You contact the management. And you say, this guy is harassing me.
Or this woman is, in this case.
Well, I use guy generically.
I got you. Okay.
Yeah. But whomever is making the fuss, you don't want to do anything about it yourself, because then you could become liable, unless that thing you do is make friends. and go from there. But if there's no friends to be made, you talk to the management, because they are preventing you from quiet enjoyment of your apartment.
So this is another one of the bake a cake and bring it down to the neighbor.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
There's a lot of movies out there, The Sandlot, etc., that address a similar scenario. However, there's also here recently a lot of tragedy, people going down to other people's doors and knocking on them.
I thought,
so
and you don't bake cakes for people that harass you,
Yeah, no, that gets a little Neville Chamberlain-y to me. Talk to the management.
You bake the cake for the management, is what.
Hey, there you go.
It's a good idea. Yeah, and then bring us a piece of cake. We'll take that.
Yeah.
We are out of time. My thanks, of course, to Chuck Crosby, the Crosby Law Offices. They are well known in the community for real estate closings. You can pick the attorney that you want to close your loan, and Chuck's on the top of them. I would highly suggest you reach out to him for that, or for wills or power of attorney, landlord-tenant disputes, which he's already weighed in on this show. You can reach Chuck over at his office at 499-6360. Also with us, Brad Lawler, who owns Home Team Inspection Service. They come in as a team. They do a great job, and Chuck and I both can attest to his team working for you to get your home inspected properly. And now with Team Bug Out, I just switched over to Team Bug Out this past week, and I'm happy about it. You can reach Brad and his group at 844-411 team. My son Greg, who does our marketing, photography, and so much more, joining us from the car. By the way, if you want to see a rebroadcast of the show, go to LouisvilleAnswers.com. That's LouisvilleAnswers.com. Also, if you want to see some of our reviews, because we're really very proud of our reviews, go to LouisvilleZillow.com or LouisvilleGoogle.com. And if you're thinking of selling, please don't hesitate. Give me a call. Come out. It's free, no obligation to come out and just talk about the process of what it takes to get the home sold on your terms and your time frame. You can reach me anytime on my cell phone at area code 502-376-5483. That's 376-5483. Or go to bobsellslouisville.com and just fill out the form and I'll get to you. That's it. Have a great Sunday. We'll see you next Sunday right here on News Radio 840 WHAS.